Why I've called you here, Sneha, today is to talk about your platform Resolutio, right? And I understand that Resolutio works with it's slightly different from traditional ODR platforms in the sense it uses blockchain technology to operate. So, to begin with some basic questions, can you explain in very simple terms how blockchain technology works in ODR?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Mohit. So there are different ways you can look at it. So if you are already familiar with blockchain, you know that it's a database that you can rely on, which helps you secure your transactions, which makes sure that your transactions are transparent. So there's a great degree of reliability on transactions on blockchain. So when you talk about bringing ODR or using blockchain for ODR, what you're essentially trying to do is make ODR transactions, whether they be arbitrations, mediations, negotiations, etc., more reliable and more secure. So this could mean that you use blockchain for all elements of ODR. So right from conflict prevention to enforcement of a decision, such as an arbitration decision or a mediation decision. So let's look at it in stages, right? So to start with, let's look at conflict prevention. So let's say there's a contract between parties to perform certain obligations, right? Ideally, you enter into a regular contract on paper or a verbal contract. So if you were to use a smart contract on chain, what this would do is this would help automate certain processes of the contract. So if I were to look at an example, let's say I wanted to buy a car from you, right? And I want to transfer both the physical car as well as the papers related to this. Now, if this were a smart contract, what it would ensure that we can draft it in such a way that when the stipulated amount for the car is transferred to your account, the contract automatically recognizes that this amount has been transferred, and then the papers are transferred back to me. Now, a lot of people argue that we're not ready for smart contract legal contracts yet, especially let's say when physical goods are involved, right? While this is partially true, thanks to technologies like IoT, we might eventually reach a space where physical transactions too can be automated using technology. So this is with
What
respect,
do you mean IoT?
Internet of Things, where
Got it.
physical objects itself can be connected to the network. So coming to conflict prevention, right? So when a contract itself can be automated, there is less likelihood of persons breaching the said contract.
Can you explain in very simple terms how blockchain technology works in ODR?
So there are different ways you can look at it. So if you are already familiar with blockchain, you know that it's a database that you can rely on, which helps you secure your transactions, which makes sure that your transactions are transparent. So there's a great degree of reliability on transactions on blockchain. So when you talk about bringing ODR or using blockchain for ODR, what you're essentially trying to do is make ODR transactions, whether they be arbitrations, mediations, negotiations, etc., more reliable and more secure. This could mean that you use blockchain for all elements of ODR. So right from conflict prevention to enforcement of a decision. Now, a lot of people argue that we're not ready for smart contract legal contracts yet, especially let's say when physical goods are involved, right? While this is partially true, thanks to technologies like IoT, we might eventually reach a space where physical transactions too can be automated using technology.
This brings me to my second question. Can you tell me a little bit about how your platform Resolutio works?
Resolutio is essentially a creators platform to help creators with respect to we provide preemptive tools to protect themselves from disputes and also post-dispute tools. So we've designed a dispute resolution process using blockchain technology and eventually AI as well, where members of the community, the creator community, are provided certain tools to adjudicate disputes, and the enforcement of the dispute is also automated using blockchain technology. The term smart contract in the legal connotation was first used by Nick Szabo in one of his blogs. So when he spoke about smart contracts and automated contracts, he also suggested, or he also spoke about how in some cases it might be necessary to have a dispute resolution mechanism, because what if a contract automatically enforces things, but let's say there were other instances that had to be taken into account which would nullify it, right? In such cases, what you can do is you can connect your smart contract to a dispute resolution mechanism, like say arbitration, right? So here what happens is you can automate certain processes of arbitration, such as initiation of the dispute, collection of evidence, selection of arbiters, enforcement of disputes, etc., using smart contracts. So that I can help with a few examples as well. So right from initiation of the official dispute, right? When there is a breach that has been automatically detected, or when the parties want to initiate the dispute manually, what you can do is you can, of course, initiate arbitration, and the notifications are sent to all parties. Here, the notifications can be recorded on chain if you choose to do that. Therefore, there is like a trail of evidence as to when certain aspects of the dispute has taken place. Once the dispute has been initiated, the evidence for the dispute can be collected, would already have been collected on chain. So back to evidence, right? So now that since the contract is already a smart contract and you've drafted it in such a way that certain details of the performance of the contract has been collected, right? It is easier to verify the said evidence. So let's just say if this is a contract for a certain shipment of meat being transported from one country to the other in a container, which is temperature modulated. You can use certain technologies like oracles, for instance, to collect the temperature of the container and store that data on chain. So if there is a dispute, parties can rely on that secure data instead of spending money on proving evidence pertaining to the case. So yes, I anticipate.
No, so I feel like this is a little bit at the intersections of both automating, uh, dispute prevention strategies with the use of blockchain, and also, in case there are other variables which have not been accounted for, then you also have dispute resolution capacities within this. So it's like mixing, a little bit of technology automation with dispute resolution, if I understand correctly.
Exactly. You ideally want to automate it, but when human intervention is necessary, you supplement that with dispute resolution.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Sneha. Now, this brings me to my second question. Can you tell me a little bit about how your platform Resolutio works?
Okay. Okay, Resolutio is essentially a creators platform to help creators with respect to pre where we provide preemptive tools to protect themselves from disputes and also post-dispute tools. So what we've started off with is dispute resolution for creators. So we've designed a dispute resolution process using blockchain technology and eventually AI as well, where members of the community, the creator community, are provided certain tools to adjudicate disputes, and the enforcement of the dispute is also automated using blockchain technology. So what we're relying on is something called crowdsourced dispute resolution. So normally when we think of dispute resolution, arbitration, mediation, etc., you think you need to be assisted by a legal professional. But if you look at eBay's ODR platform, which is one of the first platforms to successfully use ODR, they used crowdsourced dispute resolution. They relied on lay persons, not legal persons, to resolve disputes, and it was a huge success. So that's a similar process that we are relying on, where we look at members from within the creator community who understands how the ecosystem works, provide them with those tools, essentially Web3 tools, so they can effectively resolve disputes. And we automate certain parts of dispute resolution. For example, the adjudicator selection is automated. So we use a smart contract wherein interested members can vote, or rather elect to take part in a certain dispute. And the smart contract randomly selects 3 adjudicators where the likelihood of their selection is directly proportional to their subject matter experience. So certain elements are automated, but certain elements like core adjudication is still reliant on human intervention.
Now, if
Yeah.
I understand correctly, the eBay platform, the jury selection, I think it was Modria. After it, after, the technology behind Resolution Center, right? For eBay, and
Sorry, I think it was eBay's in-house solution, which Mr. Colin Rule had developed, if I'm not wrong, and then later on
yes.
he went on to build Montreal.
So
Wait,
last week, actually, we not last week, a few weeks ago, we interviewed Chittu Nagaraj ma'am, who
okay,
actually worked on Resolution Center with Mr. Colin Rule. And if I
okay,
understand correctly, Resolution Center was the name of the platform, but Modria
okay,
was the company which eventually they also sold. Uh,
right,
and
okay.
so it's actually very interesting that you talk about this. We spoke to one of the legends, and now we are looking at how that affects the development in technology today. So that's really nice to see. That's your inspiration, because she's an inspiration to me too. uh, Now, in terms of, you talked about some of the tools that are available to adjudicators, and you also mentioned the jury sort of this thing. But in in your opinion, don't you think that the whole jury system works better, or is more better suited for the West, because they actually have that sort of civil judicial system?
Okay, so the answer is okay. If I were to let me just think about it for a second. So I wouldn't
Sure.
say that the jury system per se is suited for any jurisdiction. Because essentially what you're doing is you're taking laypersons who are not familiar with the law as lawyers, and then you're providing them with the facts and evidence, and you're trusting them to make that decision. So with the jury system, they are not, they don't have anything to lose per se. So if they make a wrong decision, nothing can really go wrong, right? So there
Except
aren't
for the
any,
parties.
except for the parties, exactly. So there's nothing that can go wrong for the jury members themselves. But with the dispute resolution mechanism, or the pathway that we are following, which is also being followed by several other blockchain dispute resolution mechanisms, the adjudicators themselves have something to lose if they vote or adjudicate dishonestly, right? So how this works is that we have 2 levels that we follow. The first level that we built out is based on the similar solution that Kleros also follows. So you have adjudicators who have to stake a certain amount of money to be able to participate. Thereafter, if they have adjudicated honestly, that is, if they've formed part of the majority, then they get their stake back and they get a reward. And this is based on both rational choice theory and game theory. So this, what both of them eventually, like what we can conclude from both the theories is that each person acts in a way which brings most benefit to them individually. So when their prompt is to, or when what is asked of them is to vote honestly, and when they are told that if they form part of the majority, they get their rewards as well as the stake back, they are more inclined to vote honestly. And the success of Kleros adjudications would go on to show that this works. But we are still working on adding more layers onto this, such as So how we're different from Kleros in this aspect and some other platforms is that we don't just choose any persons to become adjudicators for the dispute. We have a thorough review process where we check what their standing in the creator community is. We have also set up a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. So to completely decentralize the process, right? So we wouldn't be selecting these persons, but members of the DAO would be collectively choosing who are eligible to adjudicate the dispute. So yeah, that's how we ensure that there is honesty in what comes out.
Interesting. Because I have also, I joined some of those Kleros Telegram groups, and I noticed most, if not all, of the adjudicators on Kleros are actually, not from India. And this is why, I mean, because in India, I mean, since Nanavati jury system has, it's not existed, and for good
Yeah,
reason also. uh,
yeah,
so interesting. I'm quite excited to see how this plays out, and I am very
yeah.
interested to also learn a little bit more about how your autonomous selection, that technology works.
Right. Yeah, sure. Just to add on to what you'd mentioned earlier, right, about how the jury system might be different from what we are following. So with automated dispute resolution and with crowdsourced dispute resolution, what we're trying to the eventual effect that we want to have is to make dispute resolution accessible for all. Now, if you look at like some of these arbitration reports by Queen Mary or SIAB or ICC, some of the factors which add to these high costs are involvement of lawyers, expert arbiters, costs that go into proving
Hmm.
evidence, etc. Right? So while lawyers and expert arbiters are very much necessary for high value disputes, for some disputes, low value disputes where participants have very limited resources to take up that dispute, it's important to have a simpler process, right? So these dispute resolution mechanisms, and if you look at Kleros as well, right, it's individuals who are fighting the cases themselves. So there are no complicated law per se. Of course, we guide them using tools. We provide, like we bring to their notice what the law generally is. We don't make any deductions or like conclusions or provide any legal opinion, but like provide simple facts, provide the law as such,
Hmm.
so that parties can represent themselves in these informal dispute resolution processes, and the adjudicators don't have to be specifically legally trained to take it up.
If you
Yeah,
don't mind me asking,
yeah,
two questions. One, uh, what uh, uh, what blockchain does Resolutio use? And second, in terms of when people are staking and just to understand the costs of conducting a dispute, um,
yeah,
can you explain a little bit about the cost generally in terms of what is the
yeah.
cost to the participant, what is the kind of reward for the adjudicators, and effectively how does Resolutio generate business, how does Resolutio make money with this?
Okay, so resolution hasn't gone live yet. So we are just in the testing phase. So I can't get into the economics part or the revenue generation part
Sure.
in particular because we're working on that. And we just yeah. I'll take the first question on which blockchain we use. So it's very expensive to put information on blockchain. So blockchain transactions are enormously expensive. So what people do is you take that information, you put it on a safe and secure storage network, and usually you generate a hash ID of that, and then you store that hash ID on it. And then you can eventually verify whether the hash ID which you currently have and the hash ID at a later point of time is the same to ensure whether it has been tampered with. An easy use case that you could relate to is with respect to NFTs. So when you're creating an NFT, right, you take your artwork, you put it on a decentralized storage solution, and then you get the CID, which is the unique ID, put it on chain. And IPFS. So Protocol Labs is one of the largest players in this market, right? The decentralized storage market. And they have been doing a great job there. And we have been using Protocol Labs for our evidence management. So eventually, when in the beginning, when we started off Resolutio, we'd heavily relied on protocol lab services. So recently they came out with their blockchain, which is FVM blockchain. And we thought it would be ideal to, so initially we experimented with a few blockchains, and then eventually we thought FVM would be great because they are specifically built to manage data. And being a dispute resolution platform, evidence management, user information management, etc., is very important. And that's why we went with FVM. Costs are also relatively low. So we just literally deployed our smart contracts onto the mainnet 2 days back. So costs are relatively low. Gas fees are low, unlike gas fees on Ethereum. So less than $1, I would say.
Amazing.
With respect, yeah, yeah. So right now, that's the cost of maybe transacting. In terms of user costs or how we make money, our next phase, or rather, we've just started building our API. So with the API, platforms will be able to directly use this as a tool within their platform itself. So if you have an issue with, let's say, a metaverse or a marketplace, you can just, instead of redirecting to Resolutio, you can just go onto the platform, initiate the dispute. So the idea is to have users of the API pay us for the
Got it.
dispute resolution process.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Fair enough. Okay, so last question now. In your journey, how has your experience been convincing people to adopt blockchain technology?
Okay, so if I'm being honest, I haven't really tried convincing people to adopt blockchain technology yet. My time has been mostly spent exploring how blockchain can be effectively used. And I don't feel we're ready to completely switch to a blockchain only mechanism. But I do feel that certain components must be taken into consideration, such as arbiter selection, enforcement, etc. Ever since if I were to start from my time in Singapore when I was pursuing my master's, that's when I started researching on blockchain. So I'd written a research paper on blockchain and dispute resolution, and my professor was very supportive. My classmates were very excited. So they were all ADR professionals. So when I started off, everybody was quite excited about blockchain dispute resolution. In my journey, my conversations with members of the legal community has been limited because I was focused on technology. So from the technical side, and especially creators, people have been very excited about it. I would say the criticism primarily came from persons who were concerned about its energy consumption, environmental impact, etc., which I think are important considerations to have. So for this reason, when we started off, we researched on blockchains which used, or rather blockchains which relied on sustainable solutions. So we'd explored Algorand, we'd explored Polygon because of some of the associations that they had with carbon neutral platforms. So yeah, that would be one of the criticisms we had with respect to energy consumption.
I mean, in comparison uh, to platforms like Visa or Mastercard and the kind of energy they consume to process transactions online, I still feel like blockchain is still a fraction of that, right? And considering how countries have started already to adopt blockchain, for example, if I remember correctly, El Salvador now mines Bitcoin purely based on volcanic energy and
Yeah,
geothermal energy. So,
yeah,
it is going to become a lot more efficient than it started off with. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's about it. Do you have any closing words, any final, statements for our listeners?
Um, I would say that if you are interested, assuming that all the listeners are into ODR and making dispute resolution accessible, I would say if you are interested in dispute resolution in general, even if it's conventional dispute resolution, please read up on technology and how technology can be used. You don't have to restrict yourself to exploring your opportunities as a lawyer or an adjudicator. You should, if you might be interested, explore how you can build solutions in the space as well, because we can never have enough people there. And dispute resolution using technology is not just about making resolution accessible or preventing conflict or making resolution affordable. It's also about how to use these technologies in a way that is sustainable. So yeah, explore more technology. Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Sneha. I think the keyword is to enable technology for dispute resolution in a sustainable manner. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for this, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mohit.